So does life, as in the definition, include life in the spirit body? And does it include life in the soul after soul union?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because actually it's pretty complex life in our physical form. And for the human in particular, it's very complex. It actually, if we examine it more clearly, you'll see that, remember I've talked about your soul in its completed state, which is like that. Now, I'm not assuming this is a union-based soul, of course. Remember, there's just from our second group, you learned that there was the illusion of separation between the two halves. When you incarnate, you've obviously got the creation of the physical and spiritual bodies, spirit body there, and the physical body. Right? And obviously, if it's a female, it would be like so. Okay, remember we've talked about the cord, the silver cord that connects these bodies, right? And sort of this connection, you could call it like a golden cord, an energy cord it is, in fact. Yes, so for the human form in order for the human form to exist in its completed state, when mum and dad, have sex and the conception occurs, if a soul is not incarnated into those body, to connect to those bodies, then interestingly enough, the life that's given by the parent to those bodies cannot be sustained. So what happens is the soul eventually takes over, if you like, providing the life to those bodies through these cords, through these energy pathways. So the actual life principle applies to the human soul, and then as a byproduct, through the ways the soul is connected to the bodies. You follow?
I lost a bit, sorry.
So the life principle comes to the soul.
Yeah.
The soul provides life to maintain these bodies.
Okay.
You follow?
Yeah.
And this is why the degradation of the physical body occurs. As you have emotional injuries in this soul, its ability to transfer energy to the bodies is degraded. The first degradation occurs in the spirit body, so that's pretty much an instant degradation. As soon as the soul has a limitation placed upon it because of the limitation of your emotions, that limitation causes a destruction of certain pathways supplying energy to the spirit body. The spirit body now degrades in its condition. So it gets wrinkly and starts looking old. Does that make sense? And because the soul is supplying also the physical body's energy through the connection between the two bodies, the silver cord, this body also stops receiving energy. So therefore this body starts degrading. This body takes a bit longer because it's slower, right? It takes a bit longer to degrade because remember there's the cell replication process that is a part of its degradation, whereas the spirit body's cell replication process happens in hours. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So physically there's laws that dictate the cell replication process in the spirit body, and there's laws that dictate the cell replication process in the physical body. Mm-hmm. The cell replication in the process in the physical body is normally around the 7-year period for most of the cells, whereas in the spirit body the period is less than 7 hours. Right? So if your soul condition in the spirit world improves, your spirit body, usually within 7 hours, also improves. But if your soul condition in your soul degrades, your spirit body within 7 hours will degrade. Right? But your physical body will take up to 7 years to degrade from the same issue. Does that make sense? But it's all supplied through energy coming from the soul, and the life force is provided through the soul to those bodies. And in fact, if a soul didn't connect to those bodies, then those bodies would naturally die in the womb. Does that make sense? That'd be miscarriage. It would be not a miscarriage, because a miscarriage is after the soul is connected. It would be, they wouldn't even be able to replicate after that point. because they're getting energy from the soul to replicate. Does that make sense?
It does. May I ask a follow-up?
Sure, you can.
So I'd been wondering whether aging and the effects of sin were a wearing away of life energy, but that's not true. It's a wearing away of the flow, the connection.
It's a wearing away of the soul's ability to receive and transmit life energy to its bodies, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's degraded. Its degraded condition means that energy cannot flow. If energy cannot flow, there will be a subsequent degradation in the bodies to which the energy would normally flow. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah? Does that make sense to everyone? Pretty fascinating how it all works. But the reality is it's all based upon the fact that you can see the power of your emotions again, the power of your condition out of harmony with love, affecting the flow of energy. Remember, all of God's energies are based upon the love and truth principles. So whenever you're out of harmony with truth or out of harmony with love, there's a restriction to that flow of that energy, naturally. And the subsequent restriction causes a subsequent result, which is a degradation of the bodies to which the energy should be flowing but is no longer flowing. Okay? So there are people in the spirit world who have passed on earth. They were quite damaged emotionally with regard to love, and they made a lot of choices out of harmony with love, and as a result they degraded their own condition in their soul, which means that the flow of energy is almost stopped completely. And many of those can't even maintain their own body and keep their body together anymore. So they actually have parts of their body that are disjointed and in different places. What you would classify as deformed, what you see as a deformation, can actually occur in the spirit body. And there are many people who have passed and still who live in the spirit world who have serious deformations of their spirit body. So don't think that all of your deformations of your physical body will disappear once you hit the spirit world, because it depends upon your condition as to whether that will happen or not. Yeah? Interesting, huh?
Thank you.
Now, you also asked a question about the soul after union. Well, the soul after union is very interesting because the soul after union can cycle its energy between both halves of the soul. Whereas before then, the soul before union is not conscious of this union, so therefore only cycles energy to its bodies. But once it's conscious of union, it's now got the ability to cycle energy within the soul itself. Now, this has a multiplying effect within the soul, therefore an exponential effect in terms of what it can create. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep. And that's why soul union is important to you. You know? And removing any of the reasons why you can't enter that state is important to you.
So that's why in soul union you can form many bodies, many physical bodies.
Yes, and sustain their energy for an infinite amount of time.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. That make sense?
Yeah. Wow.
Because you have the ability to receive more and more of that energy and therefore distribute more of that energy and therefore actually create physical and spiritual forms that you can sustain through your own creation, through your energy that's passing through you. So the capacity of your soul increases as a result. That make sense? Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we talk about a soul union, but there's a whole heap of mathematical things going on and a whole heap of law-based principles working to make that happen. Of course. But I thought I just wanted to extend that understanding because it's a fascinating area of discussion, really. You can see how, the energy of the bodies is very dependent upon the energy flowing through the soul now. And there are the same applies to other creatures, but not in the same way. For example, a dog or a cat, energy is supplied directly from God to the spirit body, and then the spirit body supplies energy to the physical body. And it's only if the spirit body can no longer supply that energy to the physical body that the body dies. Now, that is also determined by the human condition because of the issues of governance. So we'll learn later that governance allows the human to control what happens to other energy life forms and what happens with the flow of energy in those life forms. Right? So the human soul is a very remarkable creation. It has the ability to control through its condition and through its desires, has the ability to control other life forms and what happens with other life forms. Yeah. Powerful stuff, eh? Very clever. Is this clever God, see? Pretty clever. Inga.
Yes, I think you already answered my question, almost.
I think I have, but
Yeah.
but
Shall I read
ask
it
the
anyway?
question anyway. We'll
Okay.
just elucidate again.
Is the life energy one and the same for all living creatures?
Yes. So there's
Yes.
the answer to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And does it enter the soul for the human being and the spirit body for the animals? How does it all work?
Yes, it does into the soul of the human being and the spirit body of the animals. I won't describe how it works because it's a bit
okay.
complicated. But yeah, it does enter those the soul of the human. So there are, in fact, it's best for you to understand that there are, in fact, many types of energy. Some of them one's a life force energy, but there are energies like, for example, the human soul is capable of supplying enough energy to the bodies that mean the bodies don't have to absorb nutrients from food, because they can absorb nutrients from the environment through what the soul feeds them. So you can get to the point where you don't need to eat anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, you might still eat because sometimes it's tasty, right? And you might want that, but you don't need to anymore. And you can also get to the stage where you don't need to drink anymore as well, because the human body receives the flow of water through its body and supplies that to the energy systems in the physical and spiritual bodies. You can do that as well. But, you know, again, that takes a bit of development to get to that stage. Now, there's people on earth who have done it in the past, but only because they've been assisted to by spirits. They haven't done it on their own through the use of their own body. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
And the third question you had was, does it enter the soul for the human being and the spirit body for the animals, and how does it work? Well, yeah. How it works, very mathematically defined, of course, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
There are a multitude of energies that God supplies to his entire universe. The life force energy is a specific kind of energy in that it's the thing that provides life itself. But there are also energies that provide sustenance, what you would classify as survival sustenance. In other words, the same thing that you get from food can come through that energy force. And there are other forms of energy, as you can imagine. How many forms of energy are there potentially?
Infinite.
An infinite amount. So you can imagine an infinite being. There's probably the forms of energy that we're yet to even discover that could be flowing through the human soul, but as yet, because we've yet to discover it, at the moment they can't. Does that make sense? But they are and might be available for us in the future to discover and then allow the flow of. So we need to stop seeing God as a very limited being creating a very limited system. We need to start seeing the principle of infinity and how that is implicated in creation and law. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. Shula. Where's Shula? Where are you? Yep. Thank you. How am I going time? I'll just check my time, Shula. 2:10. 53, we've got Q&A and I've got... This will be our last question on the subject because we need to move.
Does God's life energy enter us at conception, or is it transferred or passed down from our parents?
Yeah, the reality is, as you can see from this diagram, that the God's life energy actually enters your soul at the time God created your soul, which may be many millions of years before your bodies are created. Right? Many millions of years. You're just not aware of how long that time may be. So because you're living in a state of unawareness in that state, you are not aware that you've already been created. It's through the incarnation process is what makes you self-aware It's a part of the process making you self-aware. But the reality is that God supplies this life force energy to the soul while it exists in, you could say, a unconscious union condition. So God's supplying its energy, just waiting for the chance to incarnate, and the chance to incarnate is created by whom? By the human procreative process that offers the chance to incarnate, and then the laws involving incarnation allow for that incarnation to take place. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So God is actually supplying this energy way before you were ever conscious of it being supplied. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's interesting, isn't it?